All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody, to our U.S. Brewers Cup PrepFest webinar. I'm your host, Lorenzo Perkins from Cuvée Coffee, also serving on the Barista Guild of America's Executive Council. And with us today is Erin McCarthy from Counterculture in New York City, the 2013 Brewers Cup World Champion. Just a couple of quick things about how the rest of this format is going to run. We are recording this, so this is going to be made available to everybody and anybody who cares to give it a gander. But we do have a few people on live viewing now, and after this first sort of structured question and answer session with Erin, we're going to open it up to questions from everybody who's here. So without any further ado, Erin, hello.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great. How are things up in New York City?
Pretty good. A little rainy today.
A little, I'm sorry?
A little rainy today.
That's unfortunate. It is 70 degrees and sunny here in Central Texas, so hooray for me, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and this is intended to help all of our current Regional Brewers Cup finalists prepare for the U.S. Brewers Cup that's held as part of the U.S. Coffee Championships. At this point in time, we have 3 finalists from each region who are going to be going forward. Where were you, Erin, at this point, about a month out from the United States Championship? What did your schedule and preparations look like at this point?
I basically had a weekday schedule of coming in early in the morning, kind of before my day would start, and doing just sensory calibration, brewing coffee, tasting it. And I decided so that I wouldn't get too caffeinated at night, that I would just do most of the tasting in the morning, and then after work I did kind of mechanical stuff, practicing 3 at a time. It wasn't really until I think 3 weeks before that I actually started doing run-throughs of what I had as my final presentation together, because I did move coffees from what I used in regionals and then what I used in U.S.
So you're saying that you used a different coffee at the regionals and at the U.S.?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of unpack that for just a second. You said in the beginning you would start off your morning with like sensory calibration or sensory exercises. Were you tasting for coffees to choose to use at the U.S., or were you sort of tasting your coffee under a series of different brewing techniques and methods, etc.?
Yeah, I knew I was using the Kalita, so it wasn't necessarily different brewing techniques, but it definitely was different extractions, different kinds of extractions with different kinds of coffees. There wasn't a lot of the coffee that I knew I was going to use when I had it, right? So I had to practice with other coffees. And I practiced with coffees that had similar taste profiles for most of my practicing, and then I also practiced a lot for the compulsory with coffees that I would just buy from other roasteries. So yeah, basically just brewing coffee and trying to make it taste good in several different ways. And then once I had the coffee I was practicing with, I really wanted to with if the brew method that I was using for that coffee would also be pleasing in a compulsory coffee.
Sure.
As I kind of guessed on what kind of general washed coffee it would be. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a lot of coffee brewing.
So that was your morning. You were spent, varying extractions, varying sort of techniques within the brew method that you selected, and then at the The afternoon was just pure mechanical, working through the ability to brew 3 coffees simultaneously or just over the course of 10 minutes, as it were?
Well, both. I mean, I had to figure, I was still figuring out, am I going to do one at a time? Am I going to do 3 at once? And then once I started doing run-throughs, when I scheduled run-throughs with my speech, that also changed it up a little bit. It changed up the pace of what I was doing in order to be able to get across what I wanted to and emphasize what I needed to while doing something, right? So in particular, I remember I moved around a part of my speech because I wanted to say it when I wasn't brewing coffee, right? Because I wanted to not be distracted by anything. Yeah, when I started doing run-throughs, I basically started with like 1 or 2 people that I really trusted so they could see, I trusted them to see the very beginnings of what I had, kind of looking a mess. And I trusted them to give me really good feedback. And then the last big week, I invited multiple people and did official run-throughs with all of my stuff.
Yeah, the first part can be really tricky when you have the idea, but it's not yet fully formed. It can feel like you're very vulnerable to sort of showcase that to people.
Yeah, totally. But and I totally felt that. I felt that it was really hard to just start, but every time you go through a run through, you learn something, Even if it's just, I don't want to pour water that way, I want to pour it this way, and then you're more comfortable for next time. Though you can't pour water, so don't do that.
Well, let's go back to the idea that you had earlier in your practice and in your routine, where you were talking about trying to pour. Were you going to do everything simultaneously, or were you going to take them one at a time? Because ostensibly 10 minutes is a significant chunk of time when it comes to brewing coffee. So one could essentially brew each cup one at a time rather than having to do all 3 simultaneously like you chose.
Yes.
Is there, or could you see a benefit to doing it one way or the other? Or I know you explained a little bit about you wanted to be able to have a speech while you weren't brewing anything. Was that the only sort of thing that pushed you into being able to brew all 3 simultaneously?
No, honestly, it was the way that I wanted to extract that coffee. It was pretty dense, and I wanted a fairly coarse grind and a longer extraction, longer meaning like 3.5 minutes. So I couldn't do that. Literally, from beginning to end. It would be pretty close. I'd go over time. So,
yeah.
And it also is coming off of, my second year in the regionals. I got to the finals and then bombed because I went over time, and the last cup that I put down was over 10 minutes. So those points weren't counted.
Right.
So I was very sensitive to that, to not wanting to go over time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked out doing 2 at a time and then 1, and I just figured out a way in terms of mixing, regular Bonavita kettle without flow restrictors, and then with flow restrictors, being able to kind of control the flow rate of all 3 as I went, and it just worked. And I thought they tasted the best.
Well, that's one thing that I'd say for sure. Your routine exhibited a lot of well-choreographed moves, especially having to move in between a flow-restricted kettle and not flow-restricted kettles, yet sort of be able to maintain a semblance of all of that. And I imagine was really difficult.
It took a lot of practice, and I even had watched my finals presentation at the Worlds and gone, oh man, that could have looked a lot smoother too, but you always think that stuff. I had to. It made it easier knowing that, okay, I'm going to use the not flow restricted kettle for this many grams of coffee, right? For this many milliliters. Always keeping in mind that I might not strictly follow that number if it's looking a little different, but mostly I did. The temperature is pretty consistent. Yeah, so that was helpful. They didn't, and knowing like, okay, in my left hand is the flow restricted, and my right hand is, unflow restricted. Again, that was just like lots of practice.
Well, so speaking of practice, I know when we talked to barista competitors for the U.S. Barista Championships, the espresso-based competition, people always talk about how that they would split the routine up into an espresso. They would run through just the espresso round, and then they would run through just the cappuccino round. With the Brewers Cup, we don't necessarily have that same option because it's really all one round. It's 3 cups of coffee. Now, you said that you practiced sort of the technique separately, and then you practiced the mechanics together, and then you did the run-throughs. When you were doing the run-throughs, was there any split in the times? And let's practice the first third here, the middle third here, and the last third here? Or was it sort of a straight run-through from beginning to end every time you did it?
That's a good question. I definitely did, all right, let me do the first, just my introduction, and now I'm going to do it again, and now I'm going to do it again. I did it, and this is always in front of, a trusted person to give me feedback. I would do it without coffee, but have the kettles in my hand and do kind of dry run-throughs, if you will, or wet run-throughs without. That also helps because, the thing about brewed coffee is that it takes a long time to brew, and I think that's why maybe dialing in brew coffee can be intimidating or challenging for people because, you're so used to dialing in espresso and within the first 10 seconds whether to do it over, right?
Exactly.
And you taste it at the end and you've really, wasted 20, 30 seconds if we're talking, FCA rules. And with brewed coffee, you have to brew it. You have to wait for it to cool down, and usually you'll want to taste it against another one. So it's a ton more time, a bigger time commitment. So yeah, you're exactly right. Like sometimes I would do a run through, and just for the words and the mechanics, and maybe not necessarily be actively brewing the coffee. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your words for a moment. There's always a ton of information that, as a competitor, you've learned about your coffee in however many months you've been spending time with that coffee. And I know there's always that desire to share as much of that as we can. But alas, we only have 10 minutes in which to do it. So how did you go about crafting not only what it was about your coffee that you were going to share, but also how you were going to share it, and essentially the underlying theme behind the entire speech or visual aspect of your presentation?
Okay, got it. First of all, I knew that I knew the things that I had to say, right? I had to say what coffee it was. I'd like to say where it was from. I had to talk about what flavor characteristics that are present in the coffee, and what I was going to be bringing out today. And what I wanted to do was, for that information, for the origin information, I wanted to make it interesting, and every time I used a flavor note to connect it to something, to kind of ground it in what I thought may have been the cause of that, right? So whether it had to do with, growing or processing, or what the roastery did. So I kind of just, I crafted that part first when I had, the coffee. And I mean, my speech was very coffee centric,
Right.
So it really did come from knowing this coffee a lot. And yeah, let me think.
Okay.
So definitely it was a lot longer when I first started. there was a lot I wanted to say, a lot of ideas that I wanted to get across. I really wanted to mention Meryl Streep. And I really, and the more that I kind of talked about it and worked on this speech, and so much, I have to say, Katie Cordulo was my coach, and she's a very, she's a very good communicator, very smart at kind of culling speeches down and, getting to kind of the nitty-gritty, so she helped me a lot. And yeah, I realized kind of what I wanted to talk about, especially was, how this coffee was kind of a stamp on the timeline of specialty coffee, right? And so the task really became like, I wrote it like a speech. I wrote it like a paper, and I would say it over and over. And I memorized it word for word rather than just having bullet points. And that's what worked for me. That might not work for everyone. But because I only had 10 minutes, it was really important for me. I'm very, I have a propensity to just go off and kind of ramble when I'm talking. So especially if I'm nervous.
You're the only coffee person that has ever had that problem, I promise.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's all the stimulation from the caffeine, but yeah, so it was very helpful for me to have this speech written out, a Google Doc shared with Katie and shared with also Sam Penix, who helped me out with it. And and every time there would be a change to it, it would be, a permanent change on there. Like if something didn't sound right, I'd reword it and then just, have to rememorize it. So the whole week too that I was, leading up to USBC, I was maybe tweaking a couple of things, but mostly I was just repeating my speech, everywhere, in the shower, on the train, like wherever, just so that it was really just kind of wrote, in my head. And then, if you have something memorized and you're not into it or not used to it, it can come across pretty dry. So
Absolutely.
That was also really important to me to make sure that it sounded natural too.
Okay. In regards to the score sheets,
yeah.
Now the first part of it is a modified cupping form, right? Now we're all pretty familiar with, but the bottom part is a little bit trickier. In the Brewers Cup, that has things for essentially the customer service scores.
Yes.
What were you looking at or thinking of when it came to your coffee and your presentation that you were trying to put points into those three boxes?
Well, the three boxes you're talking about are taste description, customer service, and overall impression?
Correct.
I mean, so customer service was really drawing on my barista experience, my customer service experience, drawing on how my favorite parts about connecting with customers, and really what really helped me was to just kind of treat the judges as if they're kind of educated consumers, So the way in which I talked to them, the amount of eye contact I gave, and honestly the place settings too, like I wanted the table to look tight, and I wanted everything to be kind of where it needed to be and not have to move a lot of stuff around. And I think about like, what are my favorite customer service experiences? You know what I mean? And it's where the server makes me feel comfortable, and maybe makes me laugh. You know what I mean? It's the worst to feel to feel the uncomfortable, to feel the nervousness of the person who's serving you is it's just like seeing somebody die up on stage, like doing a stand-up. It's just not.
Yeah, it's not
fun. Yeah. So I worked a lot on that, and I think that part, just because I've been doing it for so long, was like the easier part for me. Of the three, the taste description, that's tough because you have to know your coffee well enough where you can be practicing with general flavor notes, and then you have to be able to narrow it down that day to a few points that can kind of be more specific, right? If you tend to get stone fruit in your, tasting your coffee, that's nice to say stone fruit. It's, it's even nicer. For me, I felt like I wanted to, get specific, say like, apricot. If it's not hitting apricot, you're not going to get as high of a score for that. So it's tricky. The same thing with the barista competition. I've heard a lot of barista competitors talk about this. How specific do you get? How general do you get? And I did, when I've competed in this and used more general flavor notes, I kind of got knocked for it. So I tried to kind of make sure I only used 2 or 3, but that they were definitely there in the cup and specific enough that it would show that I knew the coffee.
Yeah.
An overall impression. I mean, that just seems kind of real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, hey, you gotta look good. You gotta think. What's that?
So gotta rock the bow tie and a classy apron.
Right, bow tie. Yeah. Your bow tie should be tied by someone who's not you, if you're me. I think that they're and it's even, I mean, it's in the rules what they're looking for, even in terms of an overall impression, right? So it's just like the feeling they get afterwards, but also specifically that's where they talk about hygiene, and that's where they also talk about workstation cleanliness. So that would also be an overall impression. Don't touch the lip of the cup. Anything that you wouldn't do in service. If you got some ground, got a little messy, some water, always be wiping it. I watched a lot of barista competitions. I feel like I tried to take a lot of just the kind of attention to detail and movements that I learned from being a barista and how baristas perform in competitions, and kind of tried to just take it into that table. It's a lot easier to be clean for Brewers Cup.
There's definitely a little bit less going on.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about sort of other resources that you had at your disposal. I know that you did sift your coffee.
Yeah.
Which I've seen some people so far this year do, and some people not do. Did you have sort of the sieves, the U.S. standard measurement sieves, or what else did you have to help you prepare for not only brewing a great coffee but crafting an amazing routine?
I mean, I will always say first and foremost, I had my coworkers. You need people with good palates who are critical, and will not let you just kind of settle and challenge you to do a better and better performance and brew better and better coffee. The sieve that I ended up using for US was actually made by a combination of myself and mostly Tommy Gallagher, who's the other tech in New York. And it's a cocktail shaker with rims on the outside with rubber, and then basically what are those things called that you would shoot, you'd cross stitch in it, like a cross stitch, like a round wooden hoop, you know.
Sure.
And we put what I did was I got like a grease splatter screen, which ended up being the micron number was closest to that one was 425, and cut it and put it into that wooden thing, and basically would put the coffee grind into the cocktail shaker, put that lid on, which was that wooden hoop with a screen on it, and then just kind of shake shake it like a cocktail shaker, but down, and all the grounds would just go into the fines just into a garbage can or whatever, and then I would use a brush to brush it off. So that's actually what I used for US. When I went to World, I did have access. Our roastery has a set of laboratory sieves, and for that I used the 450.
Okay.
Resources, I mean, amazing coffee, that's that's always really important. It's good to have. I mean, I think all the way along the line, just being in a lot of conversation with our coffee buyer and our roasters about like what they were doing and what they were thinking, because it's every point along the way kind of would enrich my presentation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in just a moment, we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions from people who are in attendance right now. So if you do have a question, go ahead and start typing it into the question box or the chat box. Or if you'd like to, you can click the raise your hand icon, and I'll call on you and unmute you. But as you guys are doing that, I want to go ahead and ask Erin, when you were you had your coffee selected and you sort of had the theme, was there a point? Was there a turning point, would you say, where everything that you were doing just sort of came together and clicked, or were you constantly tweaking, changing everything in very, very small amounts all the way up until the world, essentially?
Up until the world. Yeah, I was constantly tweaking and changing. There's definitely a moment when your speech clicks, when you go, oh man, like this is a complete thesis. You know what I mean? Like this is conveying what I am trying to get across in 10 minutes, and that's cool. I did not. Okay, so for my USBC presentation, I talked about the variety geisha and its history with Hacienda Esmeralda, but I didn't bring it to the kind of I didn't add the additional information that I did at the World, which was just where my head was going on thinking on it. That wow, yeah, like it's true that no one really was talking about variety before this variety got so popular, and what does that mean for coffee? You know what I mean? And that was kind of too much to tackle for me at the U.S. and all that I was doing. It's right. In that extra kind of step. So I took the time between U.S. and Worlds to kind of work in, variety experiments in general, and how many varieties are natural to Central America, and that kind of stuff. So so that was definitely like a big addition to my speech.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was there any point in your routine in which you tried to, by the way that you were acting or holding yourself or looking at somebody or saying a particular phrase, that you sort of had in your mind, like, this is going to be something that will endear the judges to me. This is going to be something that'll make a really good sort of personal connection here and make it seem like it's more cafe-like than it is more competition-like. Or is that something that you just didn't think was too terribly important?
I mean, I definitely tried to choose my words carefully. Like, I wanted to say that, you know, I said, I'll be chatting with you. You know what I mean? Like, instead of, I'll be talking with you, you know? I did try to make it kind of more, the language more personable, you know what I mean? Maybe, especially as I wrote the speech first, a lot of it was moving it from academic language to, you know, just kind of conversational language. You know, the Meryl Streep thing, I really wanted that to hit.
Right.
I wanted that to be a moment of connection. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like other parts. I really, and I think, you know, asking them a question was important to me. It didn't matter what it was, you know, but kind of posing a question, that wasn't too hard, you know, do you know who Meryl Streep is? And having them answer me was just such like a moment of connection, you know what I mean? And like, and I felt like what I was doing in that was like building my argument and bringing them along with me. And it was also really important to do that. So like, so not just talk at them, but connect with them and like, you know, get feedback from them. Yeah, so I think that's why I chose kind of using a movie actress, just because it's kind of ridiculous, you know? And so, yeah. And it's also was important to put where I put it in the speech, because I was kind of talking about, you know, stuff that maybe could make people zone out a little bit.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So yeah, so I kind of wanted to like bring them back with to me. So yeah, so that, you know, it's ridiculous to say that, you know, the geisha variety is the Meryl Streep of coffee, but you know, that I felt like that was my way to like kind of show my personality a little bit, you know.
Absolutely. Did you only have other coffee people or other coffee professionals watching your routine, or did you sort of seek out people who may not know what a variety of coffee is? Or
yeah, no, I had a couple of my friends watch the routine too, and that was really important because I wanted things to be able to. I mean, knowing that I am addressing the judges who are coffee professionals, you know, it didn't have to be extremely intelligible to non-coffee people, but I did want it to be engaging, you know, because it's not, because that's, I feel so passionate about these competitions that it's not just about the kind of insular collection of trophies and pats on the back. You know, it's really about building community and getting more people interested in the profession and in the industry. So yeah, so that was important to have a couple of friends kind of just like, you know, sit through it and be like, you know, ask some questions. What did you mean by that? And then I'd have to weigh whether it mattered or not if I explained it. Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, we've got a question coming in. We've got one from James, who says he's interested in asking the judges to assess beverage aroma from the decanter before serving it in the cup, and I'm curious if that is allowed or if it could be considered a split beverage, which would be illegal.
Can you repeat that again?
I guess what he's asking is he's brewing the coffee into the decanter, the server, a Hardy glass server, Kalita Wave server, or something like that.
Okay.
And he wants the judges to evaluate the aroma in the server rather than in the cup. If I'm not mistaken, you did that, right?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah. Well, there's the answer to your question, James. That's completely acceptable. What was your thinking behind that? Why were you asking for it to be smelled out of the decanter rather than out of the cup of coffee?
Oh, because you know, the top of the decanter was went in and funneled the the aroma. Also, I could get them to smell it while it was like still a little warmer, rather than at their cups. In the past, at competitions, I actually I bought like little brandy snifters and used those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like that to me didn't work because because it gets hot, glass gets hot, it's hard to touch, and also I think that when it's first poured off and if it's that concentrated, the heat of the aroma actually detracts from a lot of it. You know what I'm saying? So I found like using the decanter that was more open worked a lot better. And there's also
Gotcha.
like different stuff that you can get, as you know, like everybody knows this, but with aroma too, not just taste. I feel like when you first pour it off, it's like whoa, like your nose is like whoa, it's hot, and then you can when it cools down a little bit, you can get more.
Gotcha.
So that was the point in keeping it in that the big guy.
Certainly, certainly. Well, as we're waiting for sort of more questions to come in, you chose the Kalita.
Yeah.
Oh wait, James has got one more coming in right now. Do you think that conveying most of the technical coffee information and tasting notes through a written sheet in front of each judge would score well for customer service?
I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear the beginning of the question.
Certainly. Well, as we see a lot of barista competitors, to go back to this one, presenting judges with a menu of sorts that has all of that like statistical information about a coffee,
Okay.
how it's processed, where it's from, here's a map, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on utilizing that same idea within a Brewers Cup routine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really helpful to have information on there. My thing is that, okay, pros, it's helpful. Everybody learns in different ways, so it's great to hear it as well as read it. You know what I mean? It's kind of confirming and settling in the same information. I would be careful though to not put too much information. I'll just speak from my own experience. What I wanted to make sure that I did was to not put any information written down that I wasn't going to say, because I wasn't sure exactly how that would be judged. You know what I mean? And I would assume
Absolutely.
that, yeah. So with my visuals, I wanted them to be, eye-catching, and I wanted them to kind of sew everything together with what I was saying, but not necessarily be giving any new information. It's all things that I've said. Yeah, and so yeah, and also with that kind of information, something I learned from barista competitions that really smart competitors would do is that it's not interesting to just give information if there isn't any connection to the cup that you're serving. You know what I mean? Like, don't just tell me the altitude, tell me why the altitude matters, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I think that it can only help you if it's kind of sustaining, and I can't kind of find the word I mean, but it's something like like kind of it needs to add to your presentation in a way that supports what you're saying.
It needs to maintain the relevancy.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? It can't just be random information for the sake of information.
Yeah.
When it comes to visual aids, you use several different kinds. Would you mind sort of explaining your thinking behind each of the visual aids and presentations that you used?
Sure. I used it was for me. I wanted the information that maybe needed to be repeatable be repeated and kind of stick in their heads. So that was the taste information and how it connected to what happened at origin and roasting and how I was brewing it. And so I kind of visually showed that through, it looked like a coffee taster's flavor wheel, just in terms of like wanting color, and I thought it'd be kind of neat to use that like kind of common visual. And so I had each note kind of connect back to something that happened along the way in the processing of this coffee. And by processing, I mean not just processing, but growing, processing, shipping, roasting, and all that. And yeah, so that was, and I had one of those at each side of the table. And that was it. That was the extent of the visuals. I didn't want to, I didn't want too much. I mean, if like were I to do this again, maybe I would, have I like it when people give little books or something. That's nice.
Little souvenirs.
Yeah.
So when it comes to crafting a presentation and specifically sort of thinking of a theme behind it or a way to tie it, all of the information that you're going to be giving together, a lot of people tend to take an approach wherein they want to take a stand on something or utilize their moments to, for a lack of a better term, like preach a particular viewpoint or idea or ideology of coffee to these people. I really didn't feel like your routine had any of that. You were just sort of standing up on stage saying, hey, I have a really rad coffee, let me tell you why, and then let's drink it. Is that because that's more your personality, or was there something that you wanted to say that you didn't?
Well, in the U.S., yeah, that was the thing I was saying before, where I kind of left out this extra connection and idea that I had come to because I didn't feel like I'd be able to work it, which was, this is an amazing coffee, this is the history of it, this is how it's important for specialty coffee in general, and then that was kind of it. So I feel like it might have been a little. I'm glad it didn't come off as preachy. I think I was kind of trying to say like, hey, pay attention to this. This is important. I'm positing that this is important. I'm positing that this is a really important coffee, and this is why. And what I wanted to do was go a step further with the world and connect it to the future of coffee and bring some relevance, to kind of the wider kind of idea of where coffee growing is right now. But yeah, I definitely think that it's not my personality. I definitely have a lot of I don't know. It's not where I was, That's not what I needed to do, and not that I wouldn't do that in the future. I think that it's a compelling tactic for a competition to be like, everything else before this has sucked, and here's why this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like that kind of.
Sure.
I mean, that definitely has worked for people. This is a brand new way of looking at it. This is a brand new way of seeing it. But what I kind of wanted to do was to use the coffee to kind of bring them on like a story with me and a little journey, So maybe that's like I think I more kind of went I don't know if it's OG, but like the kind of seed to cup model, as opposed to trying to I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of it's not necessarily like a blow your mind kind of thing, but it was pretty neat.
No, I think it's hard to sort of define in a competition that is entering its fourth year what is OG and what isn't. But I think if I had to say, Erin, you are definitely OG.
Thank you so much. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Yeah, and you know, it's funny though. I think when I say OG, I'm talking about barista competitions. You know what I mean? Because
Certainly.
I got so much. I gained so many skills just from watching barista competitions, and I really, the first couple years for me in the Brewers Cup, I kind of just threw it together. You know what I mean? Like you do
Yeah.
your compulsory, and then all of a sudden you're in the finals, and you have to do a presentation the next day, and you're like, oh crap, you know? So that's why this year I wanted to like really prepare, or this past year, um, and treat it like a barista competitor would. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I did it to the, you know, I mean, they probably would have practiced a lot more. I don't know. Who knows? Like I said, coffee brewing takes a lot longer. So it feels like you're getting less done because you're, you know what I mean? You're maybe
Right.
spending the amount of time. But yeah, so I feel like the legacy of the Brewers Cup is like, you know, the history goes back into barista and the kind of advances that competitors have made there, and the idea sharing, and the educational aspect is something that I really thought like I wanted to try to emulate. Right? I wanted like a thesis. I didn't just want to talk about my coffee.
Sure.
So anyway, yeah.
Well,
OG.
OG McCarthy. So another question's coming in. James is asking, I noticed that in your routine you stopped talking a fair bit during pouring the water, and I'm curious about how that decision was made and how he managed the judge's attention during that time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, there's one point where you said, I'm going to stop talking now because I have to concentrate on these pours.
Yes, that's because when I was saying stuff during that in my practice sessions, I kept messing up the brews. So I was like, okay, I can't talk now, but I want every pause to be intentional. You know what I mean? I wanted everything I do or everything that could be taken in a way, could be taken negatively at all. I wanted to just lay out that this is intentional, this is what I'm doing. It's like when you drop a knife, right, and you're in a restaurant and you get so nervous because you're like, shoot, I need a knife, where's the server, I need another knife. Like all the server has to do is come over and be like, I see that you dropped your knife, I'll be right over with another knife. Cool. You feel so much better, you're going to have a knife. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, that same kind of service thing where you're like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not going to talk to you right now, and this is, you know, it's because I need to concentrate. But, you know, I'm not just stopping because I forgot what I was going to say, you know?
No, that's a wonderful thing. I mean, like you said, you're focusing on the intention behind it there.
Yeah, exactly.
So. Well, if nobody else has any more questions, I think we're going to go ahead, Erin, and call this a great success.
All right.
Oh, wait. Actually, James is saying that he has one more.
Okay.
So let's get those fingers a typing, James. But Erin, another question. And if anybody else who is in attendance as well has a question about their routine or the practicing or Erin's routine or the biggest, you know what? Here's a big question. What was the biggest change that you noticed between going from the regionals to the U.S.? How did it feel different? How are you when you were on stage? What was the difference?
Well, that's funny. I mean, I think, well, because, I mean, immediately, there are so many more resources for the Brewers Cup in the U.S. than there are regionally, you know what I mean? And that's just a fact. Like, the room we were in, look, no shade, nobody's fault, had, like, freshly been painted. There was no, there was, like, a boombox for our playlist, you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, you know, not an afterthought, but you know what I mean? Like, barista space needed a lot more stuff going on, you know, so we were in the side room, it was not being recorded, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, like getting the same amount of attention that the baristas got was awesome and was, you know, also a little bit scary. Yeah, getting like a real deal, like like practice room space that like behind that was awesome. So the resources are a lot greater. Having to do an open service in the first round is so helpful. And I really dug that part. There's an MC that is usually pretty witty.
Usually, from time to time, there was wit.
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah, for me, it was it definitely is clearly a bigger stage. Literally, there was a stage where there wasn't. in the regionals. Yeah. It's just it's a lot more professional.
Gotcha. Okay. So James' questions come in, and it says, one regional judge asked for more technical extraction info, including dose and sifting and whatnot. How much does that information matter to most judges?
That's a good question. It's hard to say how much it matters to most judges. I would say that the way that they're calibrated is that they do, that information is taken into account under probably, I would say, overall impression. But they want to know what your method is, right? Because it's not just about your coffee. It's not about where it came from. It's not about, well, it is all about that. It's not just about that. It's also like, what are you doing right now? You know what I mean? Like, you're doing this thing right in front of me. What the heck are you doing? So definitely, I try to hit all of the points, whether they be like, this is who I am, this is the coffee I'm using, this is what happened at origin, roasting, and brewing, right? So just a couple of points on each, just hitting all of that. So it seems like even just taking one sentence to hit, I sifted the grounds, this is my brew ratio, is also, it will help you because it's pulling them into what's happening right now or what just happened, and that's really important.
Gotcha. Well, excellent, Erin, on behalf of the Barista Guild of America, as well as on behalf of all of the regional Brewers Cup finalists, I want to thank you for taking the time to share all this wonderful information with us.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, anytime. Everybody knows I'll be at, I don't know if you know, but I'll be in Seattle at the U.S.
Excellent.
I will be there with Counterculture and with Jonathan Bonchek. So, yeah, if anybody wants to throw any questions at me, they can totally email me or I'll see you there.
That's very gracious of you. Before we go, any predictions for I don't know if you want to predict what we're going to see a lot of at the U.S. or who you think is gonna take the top title?
I think you're gonna take it, Lorenzo. I think you're just gonna swoop in. You're gonna be that horse from behind. That horse that wasn't even on the track. It like wandered in. Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, damn, a lot can change between regionals and U.S.
Sure.
I think that it ultimately is about how well you brew coffee. So it really matters what kind of coffees people are bringing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's where most of the points come from. So that's the hard thing to judge when you're watching online. You know what I mean? Because you could see a fantastic presentation. They don't get into.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna say it's either Jonathan Bonchek or no one. That's who it's gonna be.
I love it. Well, again, thank you so much, Erin. Have a wonderful Sunday, and
you too.
Look forward to catching up in Seattle with you.
All right, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.